Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to the final day of my little Dickens Christmas Author Week. Today I'm going to be talking about my favourite Dickens Christmas novella, which is of course the amazing A Christmas Carol. So, I love A Christmas Carol a lot. I made a video about it last year, which I will link down below. How much of that video I'm going to repeat, I'm not sure, because I haven't watched that video since I made it last year, but I want to talk about A Christmas Carol today because I love it an awful lot, and I think it is one of the best things ever written, quite frankly. It's great. I find it very hard to compare to how it would stand in my overall estimation of Dickens, but it would probably be in the top 5 or 6. It would certainly be in the upper half, and is a work that I absolutely love. So, the basic premise of A Christmas Carol, I think a lot of you will probably know, as it's pretty well known. It's about a man called Ebenezer Scrooge who is miserly, cruel, not very nice, lacking in empathy. His only drive in life is to make money, and he doesn't care about the people around him. And then one night of Christmas Eve, he is visited by 4 ghosts. The first is the ghost of his old business partner Marley, and then he is visited by the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come. And those 3 Christmas ghosts take him into his own past Christmases and Christmases of the present / the very near future, the next Christmas morning, and then sort of Christmases far in the future, to show what his life has been like, how he has become what he's like, the effect that his actions have on those around him currently, and the effect that his actions will have in the future. And these ghosts together strive to make Scrooge a better man. And it's fantastic. The premise is golden. What a great idea. I think it's absolutely fantastic and such a smart, clever, wonderful premise. And then the writing and the characterization and the execution, there are a lot of things I love about A Christmas Carol. I think it's wonderful. But to begin with, I think it is wonderfully written. I think it is one of Dickens's best written works, and a very good way to, in a small, concise novella, show how wonderful Dickens' writing is, how rich it is, how imaginative and interesting it is. Even if you just read the first 2 paragraphs. Marley was dead, to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was dead as a doornail. Mind, I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have been inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade, but the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and my unhallowed hands shall not disturb it, or the country's done for. You will therefore permit me to repeat emphatically that Marley was as dead as a doornail. It's so smart, and I love in A Christmas Carol how Dickens inserts his narrative voice into lots and lots of different places. There are lots of points where he's I don't know a better simile, but this'll have to do, and just kind of inserts his own voice in it again and again in a way that I love, and really makes it, one, work brilliantly read aloud, but also makes it just have this quality of a kind of Christmas fireside story told by one person to another, because the narrative voice itself, though a third-person narrator for the most, is really strong. And the writing throughout it is just incredible. It's so rich and enjoyable, the language is so fantastic, and the descriptions of Christmas and Christmas scenes are just so wonderful. I think it's fantastic. I also, like I've already said, I think the premise is incredible. It's such a fantastic idea and so smart, and the amount that it manages to deal with in this little novella in terms of not just Scrooge's kind of personal life and trajectory and kind of character and moral development, but also just the social criticism that Dickens packs in here. Some of it bigger stuff about the kind of worry that Victorian society is driven too much by the need to find money, but also so many important class issues are dealt with, and so many things as small, the kind of things you almost wouldn't notice the first time. That there is a great criticism in this book, in the Christmas present chapters, about how within the Victorian period there was a kind of church movement to close down baker shops that were open on Sunday mornings. In the Victorian period, many people would have a range at home. They'd have be able to cook over a fire, but they wouldn't have an oven, and only baker's shops or the houses of the wealthy had ovens. So for those who were quite poor, the only time they were able to have a dinner that was not boiled or fried, but was baked or roasted in the oven, was on a Sunday, because they would take their dinner to the baker's to use the baker's oven on a Sunday morning. That was what the baker's was open for, but they were working during the week when the baker's was open, so they couldn't do it. And there was a kind of religious movement within the Victorian period to shut down bakers on Sunday mornings, because people in the upper middle and upper classes thought that it was kind of immoral for the bakers to be working and for the poor to be cooking their dinners on Sundays, even though that was literally the only time when they could have like roasted or baked food. And this is just like a few throwaway sentences where Scrooge gets angry about this, but it's such an important like piece of social criticism, so telling about the Victorian period. And there's so much powerful criticism here of the kind of way employers might treat their employees, of the kind of focus on money over human kindness, and the emphasis in this book on Christmas as a time to sort of be kind to people. I love so much. I love the characterisation as well. There's so many sort of clever little smart things going on here, and the way Scrooge's character changes over the course of the book I just think is wonderful. I think it's brilliantly done, and obviously it's a supernatural ghost story, but it does feel real. Taking the ghost as a metaphor, you can understand how Scrooge, if he really sat down and looked at his life and looked at his past and the people around him and really considered everything around him, that he could change his ways. And every time I read The Christmas Carol, and I've read it a lot of times, I read it first when I was 18, I actually read it after I'd read everything else by Dickens, which is usually the other way around for most people, but I've read it maybe 5 or 6 times now, and I've also seen it performed live twice, which was fantastic. I've listened to audiobooks and dramatisation, I've watched a lot of adaptations, and every time I read it and encounter it, I notice new things. The thing I noticed this time, which is incredibly clever, is that in the first chapter, Bob Cratchit, Scrooge's clerk, is not named. The first time Bob Cratchit is named is when Scrooge is with the ghost of Christmas Present and they go to Bob Cratchit's house. Throughout the first chapter, Bob Cratchit is only called the clerk, or Scrooge's clerk, because it's only when Scrooge is with the ghost of Christmas Present and they go to Bob Cratchit's house, that's the first time that Scrooge actually views Bob as a human person. And that's the first time, therefore, that Bob is given a name, because before then Scrooge has only viewed him as his clerk. He's only viewed him in relationship to him and the work he does for him. He's never viewed him as a true human person, and this is the first time that he does. It's so clever. Like, what a little genius tiny thing to do in there, which I've never noticed before now, but is wonderful. I love A Christmas Carol a lot. Like, it's so well done, and it's so rich, and I love the descriptions of Christmas throughout it and kind of Christmas festivities and what Christmas was like in the Victorian period. I just find absolutely wonderful, and I love the ending and the changing dynamics and characters. I love the Cratchits and their family dinner. They don't have much money, and the meal they have is not really enough to go round all of them, but none of them say it because they love each other so much. They just want to pretend it's a huge feast and that they have more than enough, because that pretense and that desire to make everything more than it is, because they're so like love being in each other's company so much. It's just wonderful. It's so funny, it's so well written, it's so dynamic and engaging and enjoyable, and so Christmassy, and I love it, and that's probably enough, isn't it? I could go on about A Christmas Carol for a long time because I think it's wonderful. I would highly urge you to read it this Christmas if you haven't read it before, or if you've read it before a few years ago, reread it. It's great. It will really put you in a festive mood. And I think that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching my Dickens Christmas Author Week. I hope you have learned about a few new Dickens Christmas books that you hadn't heard of before, and I hope you will go and read some of them for festive reading this season. That's all for today. Please let me know down in the comments if you've read A Christmas Carol before and what you thought of it, and I'll be back very soon with another Vlogmas video.